Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett, and our very special guest this week, Maggie. Maggie Loney, welcome. It's so nice to meet you. So, Maggie, let's start with the basics. How was your week?
Yeah, I was talking to Matt pre-show about how weird it is to actually meet people, and talk to them in real life and not on Twitter. But my week was good. It's busy. We're a month away from finals at my work, so staying busy, but I like being busy. It's better than being bored.
It's been a good week here for me, Don. First of all, I do want to say, Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to meet you, having, talked with you and stuff like that over Twitter, like just to actually have a chance to talk to you in real life is so wonderful. So, good week for me over here in Cincinnati. Beginning of my new, promotion at work. So, not much has changed yet. We're still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing with this, increased responsibility or whatever. But no, things are going really well here, actually. Kids got a little sick, but they got over it pretty fast, which was lucky. So minimal cleanup, let's just say. And Dawn, speaking of cleanup, how was your week?
My kitties, very minimal cleanup. I could not ask for a better first, 9 days is it now? 9 days since LaFleur has joined the household, the DeQuisto household. He's making progress. He's coming out on his own terms more and more. So instead of just hiding, he's starting to play with toys, which is only the last couple of days. I tried to play with him and, he was just too stressed. So he's making progress. And Tosh, she doesn't care. She's just going to play with him whether he likes it or not. And she has lost some weight. She wants to eat what he's having. So she's not eating her food. She's not sick or anything, but she is awfully skinny. But other than that, it's going really well. I only had the one breakout. I think that happened last week. I can't remember. Did I tell you all about the breakout?
Yeah, you thought LaFleur had disappeared for a minute there.
Beyond that, there was actually a breakout.
Oh, an actual breakout.
Actual breakout. I thought, you're right. I thought LaFleur disappeared. So I put the security camera on their area and discovered he really didn't. He was there. He was just hiding in his room, which is like what cats do. And then that evening, I was sound asleep. I still had the security camera there and everything. And I was sound asleep. And all of a sudden, plunk on my chest. And in my face was this smiling black cat, like, hi. And I was like, no, because Tosh never does that. Tosh is very, she and I have the vibe going, we don't bother each other when we're sleeping or when we're busy. We just kind of have that going on. LaFleur hasn't figured that out yet. Anyway, I scared him. I didn't scream or anything, but I was just completely startled. And it was really cute because I think he was smiling. But then he ran back into his room. And then I looked at the video footage, and they had been up. Tosh helped him get out, they had been up for 3 hours before that. I was sound asleep, and LaFleur was basically ignoring her. You could just see LaFleur doing his thing, and then you'd see Tosh go by after him, and LaFleur go, and then Tosh's little leg. Oh gosh, yeah, it was funny. But no more breakouts because I just don't want a cat fight. That's all.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't really want them eating each other's food. She's a kitten. She's on a special diet.
I thought you were going to say you don't want them eating each other.
That would be bad. Yeah. Or me. I don't want to be woken. But he's very gentle.
For now. He's biding his time, Dawn. Until he can eat you. That's what it is.
I just popped on Facebook for a second. I do that every day for a few seconds here and there. And I got this post from a friend of a friend of a friend. and this is not funny, but I'm going to start laughing again. I don't even know why I'm seeing his post, but I did. And he was making a tribute to his friend who like, he had this big, long, write up, and this friend died 3 years prior. He died because he was raising birds, and he was, and there was a certain type of bird. He was raising a lot of different types of birds, but he went in by the chicklets or whatever to make sure they were okay. Cause sometimes the mom will eat the eggs, and the mom ate the friend. He's like 3 years gone.
What?
I'm reading this and I'm supposed to be sad.
No. Dawn, what?
That's horrible for a big bird to get you like that.
Oh no, I'm picturing Sesame Street, like Big Bird eating some kid.
Yeah, so I don't want a little cat to rip
my
face
goodness.
off.
Yeah, no, it's a matter of time, Dawn. It's just a matter of time.
Oh, yes, Maggie. So thank you so much for joining us. It's super nice to meet you. That was a little tangent I did not plan on, but my brain just went there. We were also talking about how my house smells like. If the door knocks or the doorbell rings or somebody basically breaks down my apartment door while we're here, it's because my apartment smells like I've been burning dead bodies in here because I had a little mishap in the kitchen, and I don't generally eat meat, and it did involve turkey bacon, and I didn't even look good when I bought it, but I was like, well, I don't think I could handle bacon, so let's try this. I usually do tofu bake anyway. It burned, and it's awful. And so any police, you'll vouch for me, right? You'll get me out, Matt. No, like, you're gonna leave me in there.
She definitely isn't burning bodies. Definitely not.
No.
So
no, hardly even want to burn a turkey. I'm so sad now. What a waste.
So Dawn, let's do a show. What do you think?
Yeah, so let's do the show. LaFleur's in the house. Everything is fine. And we're super excited to chat with Maggie.
Super
so
excited.
Maggie, the way we start, if you're familiar with our format, is we read your Twitter, which is your Twitter bio. And your Maggie Loney, if you don't know her, you're going to know her tonight. So it's at Maggie J. Loney. She's married to a Browns fan at Lil Shepherd 64, but go Pack Go. Owner of a cute dog. I almost said who enjoys trying new beer, but it's not the dog.
Okay.
He might.
And one of the big reasons we know Maggie is because she's a writer for Cheesehead TV. She has an amazing podcast, one of the very first Packer podcasts that I found when I started venturing into, it was Nagler and Grossi on YouTube, but then through Nagler, he was mentioning you and Perry, and Pack's What She Said. I've been listening for a couple of years now.
Thank you.
And so I found out from Nagler's YouTube, and then Pack's What She Said and Pack a Day podcast. Now you're a new member of their team on Fridays, right? Is that Friday?
Yep.
With Andrew and Kyle.
Bringing some respectability to that day.
It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Well, Matt and I both share, one of the reasons we kind of met is because we share a lot of our favorites, and the Tuesday and the Fridays are our favorites.
Wednesday and the Friday.
Is it? Wait, yes.
Tuesday's great. Nothing against the Tuesday crew.
For me, I always get that mixed up.
But Wednesday and Fridays we're talking about.
Because I'm late. I stay up late on Tuesdays, and I'm Anywho, and you live in Kenosha. Did you know I grew up in Racine? We're practically neighbors.
I did not, but when you tweeted about Parkside, I wondered if you had a connection to the somewhat southeastern area. Yeah.
I think Parkside. Yeah, I graduated from Carthage.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I took classes at Parkside too. They had that
reciprocity.
Thank you. Reciprocity agreement. So Maggie, tell us all about you. So what's it like being married to a Browns fan?
Low expectations. um, we joked though that when the Browns started getting good, he was like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like I could just kind of tune out, because you always knew that it was going to be like 1-15. We went
Right.
to see them the Packers Browns season. They went 0-16 that game. So yeah, I mean, he's always kind of lived vicariously through the Packers' success. And then when the Browns made the playoffs last year, that was a lot of fun for the house to have both fandoms enjoying the playoffs. And I know they didn't make it there this year, but we'll see what happens. I mean, he didn't grow up in Cleveland. He grew up in Kenosha, but his family got him rooting for the team when he was a kid. They kind of duped him into it because all his older cousins wanted to play as the Packers in Madden, and they told him to play as the Browns. So he's loyal, which bodes well for me. But yeah, I've adopted a love for the Browns, which has diminished recently, but given everything going on. But yeah, the Browns have been a lot of fun to kind of follow as an AFC team.
And seeing those AFC teams, like the AFC North teams, I mean, specifically, some of them becoming good all of a sudden. Living in Cincinnati, it's been just really cool to see, a good year for the Bengals happening.
Yeah.
And being able to like watch those Bengal games with my my in-laws and stuff has been really cool.
Yeah, and the AFC North to me it just really rivals the NFC North and like the black and blue kind of division.
Mm-hmm.
Your blue collar, and the Browns and the Steelers fans specifically. I don't know as much about Cincy fans or Baltimore fans, but they really kind of have that, like they feel similar to Packers fans in that same vein. So it's easy to go there and root for them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I was really I developed a fondness for the Browns the last couple of years. There was briefly a podcast. It is no longer, but you can still get the episodes that they did. It was two women. They were Browns fans, and it was called Hall of Shame. And they covered stories from all sports that were absolutely shameful, but they did it in a comical way. One of them was a writer for Parks and Recreation.
Oh, nice.
And the other one was a sport. I forgot their names. It was a couple years ago. But they did a couple things on the Brown. They were Browns fans. They also did, what is the Browns baseball team? They did that. That was some crazy thing that happened.
The Guardians now.
Okay. I think it was I thought it was the Cleveland baseball team, and
the Indians. Was it before they changed their name?
I don't know if it was the Indians. It was kind of, I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes and I'll send it to you. It was a crazy story about how basically they had this bright idea of giving all the baseball fans $1 beers. And so the stadium just got completely wasted. And one thing led to another, and there were some ref calls that they didn't appreciate as the fans, and they got out on the field. They were ripping. There's footage of this on YouTube. They were ripping the chairs out of the stands and throwing them on and both teams who were vying against one another to win the game went out together with their baseball bats to fight off the fans on the street. It was crazy. It was just like, and then they talked about Cleveland, and I just kind of paid more attention after that because I thought, what a crazy team to follow. How funny. And yeah, it was fun last year. But so how does your household feel about, I sensed a little bit of disappointment in the new quarterback choice, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like one of those things that was never going to happen, so we were like, oh, wouldn't that be so Browns of them to do? And then the rumors hit that he was going to go to Atlanta or maybe the Saints, and we're like, okay, well, at least he'll be out of anything we have to worry about, like unless the Packers see one of those teams in the playoffs. And then everything happened with him coming to Cleveland, and I guess it wasn't even him coming to Cleveland, but the way that it happened and the way that money was moved around and everything was just so shady about the whole thing that, he got the notification and he's like, oh, Deshaun Watson's going to Cleveland. And I'm like, haha, that's so funny. And it still doesn't feel real. I mean, I don't think it's going to feel real until we see him on the field because, even in like Twitter spaces with, Aaron and Monty, we were talking about how Baker Mayfield just felt like the guy for Cleveland. Like he's not going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he like molded, the Cleveland Browns quarterback position. Like that's the kind of guy you pictured in that franchise as somebody who was like durable and somebody resilient who could put the team on his back. And he wasn't always going to play the best, but he was going to represent Cleveland the way that Cleveland is. Like it's kind of gritty. And I don't see that happening with Deshaun Watson, but
yeah. Yes. There's nothing I can contribute to that. It's like you nailed it. That's such a good way of describing Baker Mayfield too. I mean, he just seemed like the right guy in the right place at the right time, and to see him just kind of being cast off is I feel bad for him,
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if he would have the same success that he found in Cleveland elsewhere. Like if he went to the Bills, probably not going to have the trajectory that Josh Allen had. I don't know if he ends up like Josh Rosen, who's now out of the league, with the Cardinals treatment, and then they draft Kyler Murray. Like, I think it was just a really good spot for him. And it's unfortunate now that he's probably going to be relegated to a backup because I think, if he doesn't injure that shoulder, he's looking at a contract extension and he's the face of their franchise for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It could still go in a lot of different directions because there are still lawsuits out there with, even though they're civil right now, criminal lawsuits can come back up to play, and then there will be suspensions, so he'll play for that, for that reason, if nothing else. Crazy. How do you have a sense of, well, probably Matt, you do too as well, the sense of how Cleveland, I know a lot of Cleveland fans were saying, we're not going to be fans anymore if this happens. Are they starting to jump ship, or do you think they're just going to come around?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard, like for a lot of these fans that have been through the lean years and recent lean years, they don't really have successful years unless you're dating back to the Jim Brown and, the original Browns. But I think that most fans that I've heard kind of rationalize it like there's still the Myles Garretts on the team and the Denzel Wards and like the really good guys that it's easy to root for. Jarvis Landry, if he comes back to Cleveland. So there's always going to be players to want to rally behind. So it's hard to outcast the franchise because, it's like the Washington Commanders, their front office is abysmal, but you still root for so many of the players on the team to find success. So I think it's a tricky balance, but I do know that a lot of fans that I've at least talked to feel differently about the team than they would have, had this not happened.
And I've worked with a fair number of students who are from Cleveland or who are Browns fans for whatever reason, and a couple of them that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks are saying they're looking for a new team. I think I talked one guy into becoming a Packers fan, so I think that's going to work out. But yeah, I mean, I'm hearing some of that from the people I talked to around Cincinnati for sure.
The year before, I remember watching, and I was watching that game. Who were they playing? Where Myles Garrett there were several scuff ups, right? And Myles Garrett ended up
with the helmet and the
helmet.
Yeah.
Steelers.
And I was on Myles Garrett's side.
Same.
Was it Mason Rudolph playing?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, poor Myles. But I like Myles Garrett a lot, but that just seems like a Cleveland Browns things to do. And maybe I'm only saying that because I was following that podcast and they were talking through the journey of being a Browns fan and their whole, and so, I mean, I wouldn't know, but it seems kind of like between that baseball crazy thing happening and then that happening, it just seems like the Browns take their sports pretty seriously, and that's not a bad thing.
I mean, the Browns are also the reason that you can't get a cap on your water bottle when you go to a stadium because they are responsible for Bottlegate. If you're unfamiliar, it was Cleveland fans that threw bottles onto the field and because of it was like a penalty they didn't like or something, a call they didn't like, and they twisted the caps back on their bottles and threw things at the stand. So now when you go to a stadium and they give you your water bottle and it doesn't have a cap, which I think they stopped because of COVID, but back in the day, that's why. It's because Cleveland fans used it as ammo to launch it into the field. Yeah.
So your husband isn't like that, is he?
No, my husband is like the most gentle, passive person. Like I would get in a bar fight way before he would get in a bar fight. So.
That would be fun. And speaking of your husband, you had a magnificent wedding at Lambeau Field, and you shared some of those. Shared a little bit about that on Twitter a couple of years ago. How many years have you been married?
It was 3 in March. So
Nice.
we got married right, kind of before the pandemic. But yeah, 3 good years. We've known each other 10 years at this point. Dated 9 years. So been together a long time, even without the married years.
True fan. Getting married at Lambeau Field, that must have been super fun. That'd be a great place to have a party, at least.
Yeah, and it's just a talking point. Like, we had a lot more people RSVP than we thought we're going to, which, is a bummer as far as paying for meals for all those extra people. But, there's relatives I don't talk to frequently, and they'll still be like, hey, remember when we came to your wedding? Like, remember when you got married at Lambeau Field? Like, exactly. There are people that don't know how to approach me, and that is something that they will always be able to bring up. So worked for that. It was a good story.
That's good. So your origin story, as far as the Packers are concerned, were you born and raised in Kenosha?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've been in Kenosha whole life.
So Packer fan for life. Your whole family's from Wisconsin, or have you ever, apart from the Browns, have you ever been a fan of another team, or are you a Packer fan for life?
Yeah, I'm a Packers fan, and living in Kenosha, you're really close to the Illinois border. We're as far south as you can get in Wisconsin before you hit Illinois. So growing up, it was probably like 60-40 Packers, Bears. There were a lot of Bears fans in the area just because Illinois is right there. So like, my uncle is a Bears fan. I've grown up around Bears fans, and I like Bears fans. I have a good relationship with a lot of Bears fans. I think it's a fun rivalry. It's my favorite rivalry in all of sports, regardless of what the actual sport is. I like the George Halas Lombardi connections. I just, I cherish that. I was telling Matt pre-show that the Vikings fans, I don't have that same love for. I hate Vikings fans. I hate the Vikings as a franchise. Like, no love lost there. But, the I love going to Packer Bears games because I just think Bears fans are fun. And, my uncle is like the really stereotypical SNL, like the Bears. He's a huge Italian guy. He's got a mustache. Like, so it's always fun to tease him. We danced, my dad and I, our father-daughter dance was "The Bears Still Suck" at my wedding. So that was a lot of fun because nobody knew what we were doing. And then that came on. So we polka'd together. But yeah, it's a really healthy rivalry, and I enjoyed that a lot.
It's a great rivalry for sure. And I mean, I think I've said before on the show, living in Chicago for 6 years, I never felt like harassed or people being mean to me when I was walking around in Packer stuff, which I did all the time. So no, I feel the same way as you do about it, Maggie. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, like, everybody that has ever ribbed me, being in Chicago or being like elsewhere about being a Packers fan, it's like a respectful kind of ribbing. Yeah. I don't know, but I went to the Packers Vikings game, and even Vikings fans were talking about how, like, oh, you can't watch these games in Minnesota. Like, Packers fans at Lambeau are at least nice, but when it's reversed and you're like, at US Bank, it's like, oh, Vikings fans are brutal. And they and they just celebrate things that they shouldn't celebrate.
Yes. Yes. Like a banner of Anthony Barr hitting Aaron Rodgers, basically.
Yep.
Bad stuff.
They really? Oh, that's
no. They would. I'm exaggerating.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
No, that's not a thing. But they do show that, like, on the highlights before a game, right? I mean, I've heard that before. So
still. Oh, I thought they just did it the one time. That's awful. Yeah, I share that, and I have a couple of friends out where I live. It's nothing but transplants, pretty much. So there's friends that are all kinds of teams. Fans, and one of my good friends is actually from Minnesota, and that day that happened, my sister texted me because she knew I was going to be with people. She's like, she told me Aaron got hurt and all that, and we were at this gathering, and they made a beeline right toward me, and these are nice people, these are my friends, and I was like, no, they're not going to say that. And sure enough, it was like, hey, I don't even know what they said, but it was like, to talk to the I was like, I said something like, oh, I didn't know what are you talking about? And I walked away. I just didn't know it. That was just my way to, but at least I knew my sister prepared me for it. So, but to this day, it's just, it really threw me off because it was so distasteful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just need Zadarius Smith to not put the hurt on Rodgers.
I know. Yes. Yeah, that was my next question. Because we're both, I love him too a lot. Are you gonna do you still have the candle up or?
Yeah, I don't know. You probably here. I don't know if you can see it. It's in.
Oh yeah, there he
is. Yeah, so he's still around. I've got his autograph on the wall too, and I mean I love him as a player. It's just it's so interesting to think about the way that contracts fall and extensions, because arguably, you know, if he didn't get hurt, he's the one signing the extension and Preston's maybe gone. So it's just, you know, it's weird how those fluke things happen. And, you know, at least his last game, he got a sack. That's always fun. That even though the playoff loss was a terrible loss, his first play back, you know, lined up, gets a sack, and that's how I would like to remember him, I think.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good reminder. And it was epic. You know, he did it with such joy and energy. Yeah, that was pretty awesome to have him back like that. Well, that's good. So I'm glad you're not like some people. You're keeping his candle up. And I feel the same way. I mean, I think he's going to be ribbing the Packers fans a little bit, you know, here and there, trying to, but
I hope he keeps it nice. You know, I hope it doesn't get like mean, like that Viking stuff tends to.
Right. I hope so too.
I mean, I get why he went, like Mike Smith, Mike Patton. It made all the sense in the world for him to go there, especially, you know, when he thought he could get more from Baltimore. Him going back to Baltimore was the dream scenario. I know Baltimore fans were really excited. He seemed really excited. And then I think he saw like the Von Miller deal and he was like, wait, that's how much Von Miller gets. And realized he could go make more. So, but yeah, Matt, I agree. Just don't turn it into something it's not. You know, I think people can respect a rivalry without it having to be antagonistic.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Vikings, so
we'll see.
We'll see. Let's hope so. Maybe it will be a more respectful. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So Maggie, so tell us, you're a content creator. You're the co-founder of Packs What She Said, which is PWSS podcast, and that is a podcast. Do you also do that on YouTube or podcast strictly?
We do live shows on YouTube, post games like during the season, but mostly podcast.
Okay, I thought so. I thought I've seen you on YouTube too. So Packs What She Said, kind of the coolest podcast name out there, don't you think, Matt?
It's an elite name for sure.
Yeah. So tell us about that podcast, how it started, what it's about. Obviously, we know what it's about, but we listen. But maybe those who aren't familiar might want to check it out. Why would they? What was your motivation, and how did it all get started?
Yeah, so I had been doing Pack a Day for a little while, and I used to write. Some people know this story, for a website called the Lombardi Lounge before it disintegrated. It was on Twitter for maybe like a year, and I had written an article right when the LaFleur signing happened, when he became the head coach, about how a new head coach doesn't necessarily mean a rebuild. And, you know, I looked at Frank Reich and the Colts as an example of that. Like sometimes a new head coach comes in and, you know, I thought the team had all the pieces, even with a new head coach, to be successful. So I wrote an article for the Lombardi Lounge, and Andy Herman from Pack a Day asked me to come on as a guest on Pack a Day and talk about it. And, you know, I came on as a guest a couple times after that, and he was like, you know, why don't you just join full time? Like we like talking football. So I did that. And then, you know, I had started writing for Cheesehead TV in addition to Pack a Day. I moved on from the Lombardi Lounge website, and Nagler approached me, I want to say early in 2020, I think like maybe even December of 2019, about starting a podcast. And he said, I know someone in New York, another female Packers fan, and I think you guys would get along. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know why I'm qualified to have my own podcast, but like, if you want to take a shot, sure. So Perry and I set up like a get to know each other kind of Skype call, and we probably talked like 2 hours just about football. And everybody that listens to the show thinks that we've known each other forever, like that we were like childhood friends, grew up together, but we've really only known each other about 2 years, a little more than 2 years. And it was something that we were both really passionate about, is kind of representing the female side of fan bases, because it feels really underrepresented. So when we started the podcast, it wasn't just, like a niche, like, oh, we have 2 female hosts. It was that we wanted to get other voices on. So we try to feature Rachel Hotmeyer, used to come on quite a bit, an NBC 26 reporter for the Packers before she just moved to Buffalo, or Nicole Menner or MK Burgess, all the female beat writers and the women that are kind of behind the scenes that maybe Packers fans don't know as much about, wanted to get them on the show. And it's grown a lot. I mean, Mina Kimes coming on was probably the highlight of
That was
my
awesome.
existence as a podcaster. And
That was amazing.
But yeah, so it's always been something that we really cared about, was trying to help more women feel connected to the sport, because it feels like an undertapped market at times.
I love the show so much, and it's exactly what you said. It's as though you two have been friends forever. From listening to the show enough, of course I've heard the story before of the origin of it, and the first time I heard it, I was shocked. I was like, wait, no, you guys grew up together, right? Like that's how that works. So your chemistry is amazing. I listen to it every week. I do. I've heard every episode for the last probably 2 years or whatever. So it's a great show. We love it.
Thank
you. I've listened from I believe the very beginning, and I felt, just as a female, well, how cool. I don't know why. Why not listen to women instead? Maybe they'll have a different way of speaking about sports. And I did find that it's like, well, these girls are really knowledgeable, but that's what you want. I wanted to learn, and I didn't, even though I grew up in Wisconsin, I wasn't a Packer fan. I didn't like football at all, because I didn't know what was going on. No one ever explained it to me. I was just the ditzy little girl. Although my sisters, everyone else I don't know, I was the youngest. I don't know what it was. I was just not that interested. I don't know, but it wasn't until later on in life, and definitely through the pandemic, when a lot of us came together, and that's when your show came out. But having a podcast that's just focused on hearing the women who are covering, and hearing, of course, you and Perry, is really an attraction for females. I think it's great that you're out there doing that. And like I said, I very soon was listening to you. I remember watching, because it was the pandemic, everyone was doing kind of weird things. I mean, just random. And Nagler, and maybe it's not weird, but just, everything was new to me. So he was doing, was it Trivia Pursuit or something like that on Fridays, or was it some kind of a game?
It's like a Packers trivia.
You would
thing.
do trivia,
yeah.
Trivia.
Big B would always come on and win second every week.
Pack and Perry came on with him a few times, and so I didn't know any of that stuff, because obviously I haven't been a fan that long, but it's just kind of fun to pick up on some of that stuff too. So it's great that you're doing that. It's great that you're highlighting female sportscasters. It is definitely a more difficult road, unfortunately, for women still. So, but brick by brick, and you're doing a great job, and we love following you, and hope everybody who's listening does too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then, so Pack-A-Day, so you had been a guest on Pack-A-Day, and now you're a regular. Is that the deal?
Yeah, so I think I joined full time in like April of 2019. So I've been doing Pack-A-Day for a while now. I wasn't one of like the OG members. I think the podcast started in like June of 2018. It's been a while now. Pack-A-Day's been thriving for a really long time, but I've had a ton of different teams. I used to be on Tuesdays, and then I moved to Wednesdays, and then I moved to Fridays, and I used to last season only do draft content on Fridays. Then I would move back to Wednesdays. So I've done a lot of different days with a lot of different teams, but it's nice to be back with Andrew and Kyle. And if Jacob Westendorf is listening to this, it's not It doesn't mean anything. I just, it is nice to be with Kyle and Andrew. We had a good time during draft season.
That's very sweet. And you're really into the draft, right? You're a go-to person for the draft.
Yeah, I haven't been maybe as invested this year as I would like to be, just because, life always happens to get in the way of everything else that you want to do. But I do love the draft. It's one of my favorite times of the year. And it's just, I mean, it's something I think that brings the fan base together, even though it's so divisive at the same time. Like, as weird as that sounds, like, it's fun to, get your hopes up. And it's just, to me, it's one of the best nights in sports. I have my TVs on, and, the picks always get spoiled right before. And I just love evaluating the talent when it comes to Green Bay, and seeing guys live their dream is always really fun too.
And the excitement of, like, we're going to have these new people joining us, and you get excited about what they could bring and who we might end up, have joining the team. It's an exciting time for sure.
Mm-hmm. It always feels new and fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a very spring thing, right? Because renewal,
rebirth. Yes, exactly. It's going to go there, Dawn. Totally.
Very nice. Very nice. So, okay. So bonus discussion. I love this question, especially for you, a young married couple. So Maggie, how do your people, your family, your friends, whoever your people are,
your people,
just your people, how do they help you do what you do in your podcast and in your content creation? And just because you mentioned you have a full-time job as well, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the things that it's really hard when you start out on social media, anytime you put yourself out there, whether it's writing or podcasting, or, you have to get used to a little bit of criticism. So I've had to develop, I guess, a thicker skin since doing this, because, there's always going to be somebody that wants to critique what you're doing, or, try to discredit some of your work. So I've tried to remind myself over the years that, your cheering section is always louder than your booing section. And that's something I've really had to kind of adopt. And my family and friends have helped me do that. But I've also found that my family and friends are like the bulldogs, where I have to be like, don't worry about it. Like, they don't have a profile picture. They have 2 followers. Like, it's not going to hurt my feelings. And, but they're the ones that, want to have my back. But just, it's fun to watch a community grow. Like, my parents have such a pride in what I do, especially my dad. Like, my mom doesn't really follow sports. She's proud of me for being her child, but she, comes to Packer games because she feels obligated to come to Packer games with me, like, to be part of a family activity. She doesn't really need the Packers to win, except she doesn't want me to complain, if they lose. So she roots for them that way. But, my dad has such like an admiration, and, growing up, we would always talk football. That was like our thing. So at family events, the guys will get together, and he'll be like, who you need to hear, like, bring my daughter over here and she'll educate you on all of the things Packers. So, and then I like even Facebook and, my husband's family, like, I've been getting random people on Facebook that like went to high school with me saying like, hey, I found your work, from Cheesehead TV, or I saw your podcast, or just, random people that were kind of like acquaintances growing up that just wanted to reach out and say like, I listened to your podcast. Or my favorite are the comments I get from people that are like, my daughter likes football and she's 8, and I showed her your podcast so that she knows that someday she can have a podcast. So that's the kind of stuff that is really special. Like, the people in your corner rallying to like help make sure that you feel supported in the work you're doing.
That's awesome.
I love that.
I was like, and as a follow-up, that's amazing. I mean, my daughters have started watching Packers games with me, and it makes me so happy when they start asking me questions. Mm-hmm. And so anything we can have, or anything we do have more people, more women out there, talking about the Packers, being visible, as to show my daughters that like, yeah, this is for everybody. This isn't just for like the dudes. Like, I love that so much.
Yeah. And especially like Lori Locust, Coach Locust with the Bucks is fantastic. She just became, the first female coach to win a Super Bowl when the Bucks won last year. So and Jennifer King with the Washington Commanders, she's their running backs coach. Like, it evolves so much, even, in such a short amount of time. Katie Sowers was the first woman to make it to a Super Bowl when she was with the 49ers on their offensive coaching staff. So it feels like it's something, hopefully, that, in 20 years, we're going to be talking about, hopefully the first female head coach in the league. And there's certain coaches like Ron Rivera and Bruce Arians that are really good at paving the way. And, I think it's just important for people to realize that you can be in your position without having to have played the game. I tried to play football in middle school. I just want to put that out there. I wanted to play football, and my mom said, absolutely not. Do you know how much your mouth costs? Because I had braces. She said, no football. But, there are more opportunities now for women to get involved in the game. And I think, it's just something I've always really cared about. Football has always been my favorite thing. Like growing up, I always played football with the boys at recess, tackle football, like always got hit just like the boys did. I always loved writing. I liked watching football. I liked studying it. So it's never been like this thing to me that felt like unattainable, because it was just something I grew up doing, and it just happened, that I was a girl doing it. So I think the more visibility that's out there, hopefully it's something that we don't talk about as being as taboo in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah. And we hear that you have a really nice spiral too, right?
I do have a lefty spiral. My dad, is a righty, but we used to throw a football all the time when I was a kid. And I used to get in trouble because I would sprain my fingers before guitar practice. And then I wouldn't go to guitar practice because my fingers were all sprained from playing football. So guitar fizzled out, but I still can throw the spiral.
And more important life skill anyhow, I think, comes down to it. So
yeah.
I can't throw anything. I cannot throw I'm fairly athletic, but for some reason I cannot throw a ball. I probably, I think I can throw a football better than a regular round ball. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Like I'll throw a ball for my cats, and it'll not be but 20 feet or something, right? And it's just a little ball, and it's like, I have generally really good hand-eye coordination. I played tennis, I played golf. I was a natural. Cannot throw a ball. And the cats are like, what? Where is it? I have to go. Then I have to go under and find it. It's so annoying.
The cats are laughing at you behind your back, and
they're like,
it's a terrible scene.
Oh, okay. And so last but not least, one of our other favorite questions that we love to talk about with our guests, and that is, of course, the Packer community, the Twitter community, the online Packer community, which includes us three and beyond and beyond and beyond. We made friends over Packer, over podcasts, over Packer is obviously over Twitter, over YouTube, and over podcasts and that kind of thing. And so we like to ask Maggie, what is one of the things you appreciate most about the general online Packer community, and one thing that you would change if you could?
I think to me, one of the things I love the most is, I started on Twitter just like following Packers. Like that's why I got a Twitter. I had one that I pretended that I would use for like work and job hunting. Like, how they tell you to like build up your social media for jobs. And then I was like, nobody cares what I tweet. Like, this is stupid. So I started using it for what I wanted to use it for. And that turned out to just be football takes. And that's how my initial community grew. That's how, I found the Lombardi Lounge and was offered a writing job there, was just wanting to connect more with Packers fans. And there's genuinely, and some of that was from things like Pack-A-Day, but there's people in the Packers Twitter sphere that if they called me right now, I would drop anything that I was doing to go be there for them. And I think that's really special. Dusty Evely's one of those guys, Andy Herman, Jacob Westendorf, Kyle and Andrew, that I podcast with, Perry, obviously, anyone from Cheesehead TV, like the relationships that you build, even when you've never met people in person, it makes it almost sweeter when you do get to meet them. I met a lot of Packers fans during training camp, being up there, and that's really fun. But I think that sense of community is really special, the relationships that you build through social media. But I don't know, I think that might also be one of the things that I would change, is for as close knit as some people are. I think we take social media too seriously, honestly. And the gap between the Super Bowl and the draft, I've been on Twitter less and less, and my mental health has been much better because of that. And there always seems like, I call them like turf wars or like beefs. Like I wish that everybody could just kind of get along more, because it always seems like there's a cluster or a subsection of Packers Twitter that's mad at another subsection, and everybody, like, it's like you're supposed to choose a side, or like you have an allegiance. Like I have a C on me for Cheesehead TV, and then there's like, everybody's got initials for like what gang they're a part of, and it's just it like it's so divisive sometimes, and I just want to be friends with who I want to be friends with, and I read everybody's content and I like everybody's content, and I don't look at it as competitive. And I think social media like breeds us to be competitive, and I've never been about it.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what Donna and I talk about, is just how we like to spread love in the community, and just like be appreciative. And when I see those beefs, it always kind of confuses me, because it's like, yeah, we all love the Packers, so like, what's the problem? Like, let's talk about how we hate the Vikings instead. How about that? But it is always surprising to me. Sorry, it's always surprising to me when I hear like certain, like, say, podcasters or content creators like showing how they are competitive with others in the same sort of form. It's like, you're not, like, this isn't like a competition, I mean, like, Don and I have probably many fewer listeners than a lot of podcasts out there, and like, I don't care, like,
Yeah.
like, we're doing this for fun, and like, just to like talk about things that we like, and get to talk to people like you, Maggie. And I don't know why anyone has to like be competitive with it and develop these sort of beefs like that. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, I think a lot about too, like, if I could make this my full-time job, would I be able to do it? And I don't know, honestly. I don't know if I have, like, Mina Kimes is somebody that I admire and I adore, and I think she's fantastic. And, she started as a business journalist, and she was approached by ESPN to start writing about football because of a piece she wrote, actually for Tumblr of all places, about the relationship she had with her dad and how special it was for her to watch football, with her dad, and how it bonded them. So, people get their starts in these weird places, and now you can't turn on ESPN without seeing her. And I just don't know if I could have my life that scrutinized and under a microscope, because even having, the 9,000 followers that I think I do on Twitter, it's too much. And, my tweets get filtered now, where I don't see every reply and I don't see every like, and I miss a lot of comments from people that I normally talk to, because Twitter thinks it's like doing me a solid, by not showing me things. And I appreciate the solid sometimes when it's someone saying like, you are dumb and ugly. Like, I don't need to see that. That's not worth it. But most of the time it's like, I just want to talk to people about sports. That's why I made a Twitter.
Yeah, and like, for as amazing as Mina is, she's like constantly under fire from all kinds of
always
folks on social media or beyond, and I can only imagine how crappy that is, especially given how amazing her work is.
Yeah, yep. Couldn't do it.
I mean, I would think you just have to develop your own filter in a way. I think as we age, I was trying to figure out a different way to say it. That's the running joke with Matt and I. How I talk about.
Dawn always talks about how old she is on every episode.
I'm older now.
Yeah, you said a birthday. That's right, Dawn. Happy birthday, by the way.
61 years old.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Another trip around the sun. I don't care about things as much, about things that used to bother me, and I have my own filter. It's funny you said that about how we're getting fed certain algorithms and whatever, whether it's like, I saw, this is probably pre-show, I won't bring it up, but that crazy thing I saw from some guy, I don't even know, a friend of a friend of a friend, about his friend who got eaten by a bird. I mean, why did I see that? Now
you brought it up, Dawn. Now you brought it up.
I was like, why? Well, I'm not bringing the whole why did I see that? Why am I seeing that? So yeah, that's a problem. The whole artificial intelligence thing. Like, why would anyone think I needed to see that? So yeah. Anyway, but that didn't bother me. I'm just saying, you're right. We're not seeing a lot of things. I know I can look through my notifications. I'm missing out on a lot of things. And so the last few weeks, I'm just not even posting, or I'm hardly present on Twitter, because it's frustrating. because I'm missing things, or I'm seeing things 4 days later, and it's like that's already not happening anymore or whatever. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I guess there has to be a new type of social media or something that we can get around it. Yeah. But that's what having these kinds of things, having podcasts and doing live streams and having YouTube, Twitter Spaces is a good solution for that. I'm not thinking like Twitter communities are helpful, because I'm finding with the Twitter communities, it's just a subset of different but the same, and you're taking time off of your timeline or in maybe seeing other things when you have these communities, so then you're breaking yourself out too much. I don't know. I'm not sure the community thing is going to work for me.
Yeah,
except for Packers Pets. Hold on, Dawn. Except for Packers Pets, because that's not going to go anywhere. Okay.
But then I'm like, well, I could just post those on my page.
Well, yeah.
And I did open up a Twitter page for Tosh, but now I have Tosh and LaFleur together, and so it's like, why don't I just post these on my regular page? I mean, it's doing extra. It's time, and I think time is so precious, and there's just no time.
Yeah.
There's so limited amount of time, so that's where I'm coming from. And we want to spend our time, but I do love spaces, so that's one way to get around it, to keep it positive.
Cool.
The spaces are working.
Yeah,
I could see them practically replacing podcasts in a way, but not that they need to, but anyway. Well, coolio. So one of the questions I was going to ask Dusty when he was here, and I forgot to, is define rebuild as regards an NFL team, because you mentioned when you wrote that article when Matt LaFleur was brought on, it wasn't a rebuild. We had a new coach. That was about it, right? Rebuild means what to you?
I always interpret rebuilds as your window is completely closed. And I think the Packers have been very fortunate in the fact that as long as they've had Aaron Rodgers, they knew that their window would never close. So having him back this season, was a big part of that puzzle, and that, now if he's back for 2 years, 3 years, however long he decides to play out this contract, that your window's open. And the Devontae trade, as unfortunate as it was, gave them a lot of the cap space they needed to kind of make moves. And I know that Brian Gutekunst always says, like, we're not rebuilding, we're reloading. And I think, honestly, if Aaron Rodgers had retired, the Packers would have been able to contend in the NFC North, whether it was Jordan Love or Baker Mayfield or whoever else, happened to be under center, because of the talent they had at every other position. I think when you talk about a rebuild, it is the teams that are having fire sales, and they have to offload some of their hefty contracts, and they're the draft and develop teams that seem to always be drafting and developing, just because they don't have, some of those key pieces. And I think the Super Bowl this year was a really good example of the two ways that you can build a franchise. You can either mortgage the future the way that the Rams did and go all in, or you can strike gold with a rookie quarterback that's on a rookie deal, and plays really well, and build a supporting cast around him. And the Packers have always kind of done it the opposite way, where they've had the veteran quarterback that cost a lot of money and then added the pieces around the veteran quarterback. But I do think that the Rams have kind of created a case study that, we'll see a lot of teams try to emulate now in the future, about, ways that you can maximize your quote unquote rebuild window, or at least kick the can down the road until you feel like your window has truly closed.
The Rams are so fascinating in that regard too, because it's like, how long can they go before everything just crumbles? A year, 2 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll find
because the
out.
gap is real, as much as we like to say it's not.
Yeah.
TBD.
It'll get there.
It is, but it's elusive. It's elusive, especially if you don't do math. Well, what a privilege to be able to ask you that particular question and all these questions, Maggie, face to face, because this is exactly why I got involved in Packers Twitters, because I wanted to learn more. So thank you for that, and thank you again for being here. So we do our main theme, especially when we don't have guests, and it's called our signature superlatives. And I hear that you have a superlative that you brought to share with our audience tonight. And I don't know what it is, so I'm excited to hear what you're going to tell us about.
I do. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted my superlative to be. I even listened to old shows to see what superlatives they had used to make sure that I wasn't doubling up. Andrew and Kyle from the Friday Pack-A-Day show asked to be the superlative, and I said I would think about it. They were going to be my fallback if I didn't have another superlative, but I do have one now, so it's not Andrew and Kyle. Even though you should still listen to the Friday episode of Pack-A-Day because it's really good. We talk about safeties. But mine, I'm going to call it a purchase of the week, or most likely to spend money on, maybe is another way to word this. But her name is Laken Litman, and she wrote a book for Sports Illustrated called Strong Like a Woman. And it is 100 game-changing female athletes. So it goes through, it's ahead of the 50th anniversary of Title IX. But you can purchase that book from Rizzoli Books, or I guess it's on Amazon and other places. But it's just 100 of the most influential female athletes across all sports, Paralympics, Olympians. The women's soccer team is featured quite a bit. Billie Jean King writes the foreword. So going to purchase that. I'm looking forward to kind of reading through that.
That's amazing. I didn't know about that book. I'll have to definitely get a copy. My girls have the Rebel Girls book series. I don't know if you're familiar with those. It highlights, like, at a writing level that kids can, kind of take in, stories about, like, women who have, like, made history, but important women in history who are worth, like, kind of talking about and getting to know better. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that book kind of put them right alongside the Rebel Girls books. Like, here are more great examples of, like, women doing amazing things. Like, that's cool. Yeah. I didn't know about that at all, Maggie. I'm glad you told us about it. Well, I will feed into Andrew a little here, wanting to be a superlative. And it's not because you're here, but it's just because, I keep going back to this. It's something that he said on last week's Friday Pack-A-Day. Because a lot of the draft for me is like wanting to know what's going to happen because I'm nervous or anxious about things. This is the thing we've talked about on the podcast a lot, actually, in the last few weeks. And so, of course, I'm like, well, what are we going to do about wide receiver? What are we going to do about wide receiver? All the good wide receivers can be like go in a run in the first 21. We won't get anybody. We'll have to like waste capital trying to trade up to get somebody who we really want. But then Andrew laid it out really well why we shouldn't be nervous about that. And just to really quickly summarize it, he kind of talked through on last Friday's episode about, well, who are like the top players people are talking about? Like, how many are there in these different positions? There's like 4 edges, 3 corners, 2 safeties, 4 OTs, a quarterback. Like, all could be taken above 2022, and that's 14 people right there. But then a bunch of like wild cards and other like really high level picks. Kind of to illustrate really what he's saying is that there's gonna be a lot of wide receivers still available. Like, sure, some of the really, really good ones might be gone, and a whole side thing of like who are the good ones, because they're all different with their own like different strengths, and maybe shortcomings is too harsh a word to use for it. But even if like one team says they think Chris Olave is the best, the Packers might say that somebody else, like, Pickens is best or something like that. So even to say like the best receivers, well, no, it's just maybe some of the better receivers might be gone before we have a chance to take one. But, there's a good chance that the ones who we really want are still going to be there. Maybe even to the point that they wait till, 28 to pick a receiver or something. But point being that when I get nervous about that run on the wide receivers, I think back to what Andrew said, to his wise words. So it's most comforting is the superlative. Aww. And it makes me feel better. I'm like, okay, no, it's going to be okay. I always got to remind myself, in Goot we trust. It's going to be all right. He's got a plan.
He does.
I like that, Maddie. That was just, listening to you recap that was just like drinking a nice hot cup of chamomile tea. No, really. And that might explain part of my reason for shying away from Twitter right now too, because I don't want to be nervous. I don't want to be nervous. And we did do that mock draft, and I got a really good receiver for the Lions at pick 32. So probably, it will play out that way.
It's a deep class. There's a lot of good wide receivers projected to go as late as the 3rd round, like really good ones.
Right.
Alec Pierce from here in Cincinnati, for example. I'm a big fan of his.
Which which probably played into their decision making about Devontae.
I think could have been, yeah.
Right. I mean, they're going to look at what's available. I mean, that's their job, I think. But so yeah, so I have the best get of the week, and that's Tom Grossi's interview of the Mark Murphy. I was like, what? Tom Grossi is where? Interviewing who? Wow, that's impressive. So if you haven't seen that on YouTube or heard it yet, Tom Grossi, congratulations for that great interview, and that's the best get. And go Tom, go! I've been following Tom Grossi. He was one of my first with Nagler, and then Grossi, and then once I kind of did the same thing. I got to get on Twitter for Pack. It appears that Twitter is the place to be for Packers stuff. So I found all kinds of great resources once I got on Twitter, but those two were my first favorites on YouTube. And so I was watching Tom. I remember staying up late when he got to his 100,000 followers, because he didn't have anywhere near that many followers when I started with him. And so that was just really fun. And I've seen that with other channels that I've started watching that were really good. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're celebrating 100,000. It's really fun to be there with, because they know who you are because you were there in the beginning, like the 37 people who liked, they recognize your name. And so that's kind of cool. So yay, Tom. I know he mentioned he wants to live in Wisconsin. I have a feeling that's going to happen one of these days. He really wants it. It'll definitely happen. So, well, those are some great superlatives, and that's a lot to chew on, Maggie. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. We really love getting to know our Packers content creators and NFL in general and other content creators here on this show. And we really appreciate you spending time with us tonight. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, just thank you both so much for having me on. I mean, I've seen the show, Andrew has brought up the show a couple times on Pack-A-Day. You were both part of the mock draft. So, and I do love the title. Hey, we like your pod. Great name for a podcast.
Thank you.
But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's fun to listen to. You've gotten some really fun guests. I know Sam was on, Aaron, Dusty, Todd. So just honored to be here.
Well, really appreciate you joining us. This is a ton of fun.
Any bonus thoughts, Matt, before we go?
No, just the weather's starting to get nicer in a lot of parts of the country. I saw a picture from Canada today that was like still snowing there, which kind of blew my mind because like I wore a short sleeve shirt outside today. But point being, if you have a chance to get outside, enjoy some nice weather. It's good for clearing your head, getting away from a screen for a minute is what I'm trying to say here. It's good stuff.
That's some very good advice, and it helps us have perspective and appreciate each other more, because we do love spreading the love and what we have in common, not what we're different about. Because you know what? We're all entitled to have a different viewpoint on things. That doesn't mean we have to be enemies or crucify people for that reason. So, and friends, make sure you're following Maggie on Twitter at Maggie Loney, MAGGIELONEY. I like to spell that out because I know sometimes, especially when I was in the beginning stages looking for content to listen to, people would say, yeah, follow me at blah. And I'd be like, it's spell it. Anyway, all of the links that we discussed in this show will be in our description. So you can just click on over to those as well. And we love you. We appreciate all of those of you who are listening. We are so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and to have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod.
Yes. I almost said something about the Browns being
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.